Hello, Stabbers! Welcome to the latest installment of StabMovies.com Behind the Mask for our newest movie, The Stab Reboot. I'm Joshua Patrick Dudley. I'm the writer, director, and executive producer of Stab, and I also play Jackson Duvall in the movie. Jackson is your typical stoner character, mostly there for comedic relief, and then at the end it's revealed that there's a big twist and he's actually the killer with a pretty aggressive motive. So that was really fun to play. I wanted to write myself something different than what I would normally play, and I've never really got to play the stoner character, and then to have him fake his own death as well was really fun. But that was the main reason I did it, was I just wanted something different and something short and quick so that I could make it through the movie pretty quickly and only have to be in front of the camera a couple of times, which is why you'll notice that any scene that I'm in before I'm the killer is actually shot solo. There's no one else really involved in my scenes aside from the killer. So 2020 was our 10-year anniversary on YouTube, and I really wanted to do something special. So that's where the idea of the Stab reboot kind of started to develop. We had done some special interviews with the actors and a big, huge documentary called Behind the Mask, which this is now a part of, but we didn't really have any special movies planned. And the fans always, over and over and over and over again, are asking for another Stab movie. And we really struggled through Stab 7 twice and then through Theta. So we thought we were stuck in the Stab 7 curse. But I said, you know what? Screw it. We're going to give it a try. And I'm going to try to make a new Stab movie. But I don't want to start where we left off. I don't want to have to try to get everybody back and stuff like that. I want to start from the beginning. That way we can have new characters, and any of the actors who were in the previous movies can kind of come back and play something if they want to. That way I can ensure that we're really only getting the committed actors who really, really want to be here and that are going to show up. So I came up with a couple of different ideas for the script for the movie, and ultimately I ended up pulling together a bunch of old ideas that I had and kind of creating one big explosive idea for a Stab movie where everything just kind of keeps coming and the action just keeps coming and the killer's involved heavily in almost every single scene. I think there's only 5 or 6 scenes in the entire movie that doesn't involve some sort of interaction with the killer. So some of the different ideas I was working on for the reboot were really focused on the killer and his costume, or their costume. And one of the ideas was that the costume kind of gave whoever wore it powers, which was where the idea of him teleporting and kind of being a ghost came into play, which is also something lifted from the Stab 7 Knife of the Hunter script, where my character appears to be a ghost throughout the whole movie, but then at the end you find out that he's actually using holograms and Halloween projectors to make it seem like he's a ghost, but he's really alive. So I kind of stuck with that idea, and then I really wanted a new lead girl, so I came up with a new storyline for a new lead girl that was still kind of based on the storyline of Sidney Prescott, so this kind of felt like the first Stab movie still. And then from there, ideas just blossomed. Piper's obviously the replacement for the Gale character, and Mark's character Ryan is the replacement for Dewey, though I will say a much more drunk and verbally abusive and stern version of Dewey. He's definitely not the comedic relief in this movie. And then everyone else kind of just fell into where I wanted them to fall as to who they were playing for their characters. I was lucky in the fact that most of the cast had already committed to doing the movie before I had written a lot of the script, so a lot of their characters were written specifically for them, which I love doing because it makes their acting a little bit easier, it makes it easier for them to get into character, and it also makes it easier for me to capture the right kind of emotion. But before all of the cast was set in stone and I was still in the developing phase, I actually went to my partner in crime and best friend Rachel and presented her with the idea, and she didn't want to make another Stab movie. So it became this long discussion between us, about having to give the fans what they want as opposed to what we want to make. We try to make original short films and full-length movies, and they just don't get the views that the Stab movies get. So ultimately, we decided, it's probably the best idea for us to try to make a new Stab movie. So then our little issue with Fun World came up where we were no longer allowed to use Ghostface, and it kind of became this big thing all over the internet that we weren't allowed to use Ghostface and nobody was allowed to use Ghostface in their fan films, and we started hunting for a different mask. It really did kind of blow up on the internet. Like, people were tweeting about it and writing about it and posting news stories about it. Videos about it came up on YouTube, how we weren't able to use Ghostface in the movie. So thank you all for your support and really wanting us to be able to use Ghostface in the movie. We really appreciate everything you had to say, but we want you all to know that there was absolutely no drama between us and Funworld at all. You know, they kind of just said with Scream 5 in development, they were having issues with giving people permission to use the mask. So we rolled with it. And like I said, we started looking for a new mask and we tested out a couple of custom designs and they just didn't really seem to work. And then we bought another mask. And that really didn't work either. It just wasn't quite right. It had a semi-ghost feel, semi-skull feel, and it was neat looking, but it just wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And then I found the bad boy standing behind me right now, and that's what we ended up using in the movie. It's a creepypasta mask, which is really cool. It kind of doesn't really have its own story, so it was kind of neat to invent a story for this mask. And nobody else had used it yet, so we wrote to the company to make sure it was okay, and they said yes. So of course, by the time that we get all of this settled and worked out and we're about to begin production, we hear back from Funworld that we now can use Ghostface with a couple of stipulations, and it was just too much at that point. And we had already committed to a new mask, so we rolled with it, and not all the fans were happy that we replaced Ghostface, but you never know. Ghostface could come popping up in a sequel and replace him. You don't know what's going to happen, but for now, we love this mask, and those of you that loved it too, thank you so much. Those of you who didn't like it, I'm sorry. I know it's not Ghostface. I know some of you think it's silly looking, but honestly, we were pretty scared of it. Like, even on set, if that thing comes at you, even the thing standing behind me right now, when I walk into the room and I see it, I always jump a little bit, so it has a pretty good impact, so I hope you guys can enjoy the new version of the Ghost. One of the other really exciting parts about doing the Stab reboot was that we had some people working with us to help us create better props and costumes. So at Scream Robes on Instagram made us our fantastic new robe that we have, and it's a combination of the costume from all of the Scream movies, so it's kind of our own Stab version of it, and you can actually message at Scream Robes on Instagram and they will make you our exact costume and you can buy it from them. And then our masks that we had donated by Burkbench Designs are just fantastic. He did an MTV Scream mask for us, a goblin version of kind of a screaming mask too, and both in green to be special Stab versions of them. So those are really, really cool. And he also made us a prop rubber Buck 120, which was awesome. And we used it in almost every single one of the scenes where people get stabbed. That was really, really fun. We were working on a retractable knife, but it never came to fruition before production began, so we ended up using the rubber knife for almost every time the knife lands in someone. And then Jose, our friend, actually made us some knives as well, and he made us a prop Buck 120 that was made out of resin, and then he made us a special serrated version that's used in Adam's death scene in the movie, and it came out great. And then we were also so blessed that we did some live streams before the movie, and lots of you donated to our movie, and you gave whatever you could, no matter what it was so helpful to us, and we can't thank all of our donators enough. All of their names are in the credits if you want to see who donated. So everybody that helped us out with the movies, from people that helped us with props and costumes to the donators, we love you all, and we can't ever thank you enough for all of your support. We have worked with some really, really great people before, actors and behind the scenes, and the actors always bring so much life to their roles, so it's always exciting when, like on this movie, you get a cast together that really bonds and is really excited to see each other. It really was like bringing a group of old friends together for some sort of reunion, which is ironically what happens in the movie. But it was like they all knew each other, when in reality, only a couple of them had met, and it was very briefly when they had met because it was on other productions of other Stab movies or short films, and some of them had never ever met at all. Even some people that were in previous short movies and full-length movies hadn't met some of the main cast members or even Rachel, so that was really kind of crazy. So I was really, like I said, lucky to assemble such a good cast that really cared about each other and cared about committing to their roles and giving everything that they could to the movie. Yes, there were still setbacks. We still had quite a few recastings. Most notably, we had to recast Kia, who was originally supposed to play Deirdre, which was a huge hit to us because I was writing this movie during the middle of the Black Lives Matter movement, and Rachel and I were pretty active in it. So we really wanted a strong female character who was black that would survive the whole movie. And that's why she's written as the hero, because she was going to be the black girl hero. That doesn't happen very frequently in horror movies, and we really wanted to give that to our fans, especially because our movies are so whitewashed, because we live in New Hampshire and it's so hard to find black actors out there. Black actors and actresses, if you're watching this, please audition for our movies. We need you so bad. We are sick of having all-white cast, though we are grateful for the cast that we do have. So like I said, having to recast Kia was a big hit, and it was a little bit of drama, I'm not gonna lie. She was supposed to show up, and she got scheduled to work, and then we moved filming to accommodate her schedule, but then she still refused to show up and picked a fight with me and quit the movie, and it was drama, so whatever. But then we got Ashley Swank back to replace her, and she was just the fortune teller in Stab 5, but it was really nice to have Ashley come on and take on a bigger role and do such a good job at it. So thank you, Ashley, so much for saving the day there. And then we also lost one of our favorite actors, Dave Allen. He had some personal issues come up in his family and could no longer be part of the production. So we had to find a new cast member to play Lance. And the part of Lance was specifically written for Dave, and he loved it so much and he was so excited to play it, so it was so sad that he couldn't play it. But Sherry Lee, who was in the opening scene, found us Ethan Rogers to replace him, and Ethan just did fantastic, and he was an absolute joy to work with on set. So another case of we were sad that we had to recast, but we got really, really lucky with the recasting. And then one of the other casting switches was Rachel, sadly. Rachel had a little bit of a cancer scare right as production began, and she had to pull out of everything. So she never got a chance to come and help out with any of the filming or anything like that at the beginning, especially. And she had to give up her character, her big character of Piper Belmont. And originally I had written just a cameo for Stephanie to come back and play a new version of Shannon Nightingale, because I thought that would be really fun. But ultimately, they switched roles, which wasn't intentional either, but once Rachel got the all clear that she didn't have cancer and was able to come back, I still wanted her in the movie. So I switched her to the therapist part, and Rachel picked out her own character named Miranda, and she became Miranda the therapist, and Stephanie was already taken over the Piper role that Rachel helped me develop. I wasn't sure where to go with the Piper role. I didn't want her to be a news reporter like Gail Weathers, so Rachel came with the idea for her to be a crime scene analyst, and I loved it, and it was such a good idea, so I just kind of ran with it in the script. So again, sad that we had to recast, but we got Stephanie back in a big role, and then ultimately ended up being able to use Rachel too. And Rachel finally got to come and help out on like the second to last night of filming too, because I was desperate. I needed to be in the costume and film at the same time, which was really, really challenging. So I got lucky, and Rachel took a little road trip with me for the day now that she was feeling better, and was able to film the scenes at Adam's apartment and Adam's death scene. She really helped out during Adam's death scene filming while I was in the costume. So thank you, Rachel. I love you so much, and hopefully you'll be back for the sequel too in a bigger part. There were a few other recastings as well. We had originally cast the kid who was doing the voice as Seth from the opening scene as well, but he had never really acted before, and he didn't really want to be on camera. So he ultimately decided that he wasn't going to play the part of Seth. So that was sad, and it was kind of short notice, so we had to replace him really, really quickly. And he still did a great job. He still played the voice in the movie and freaking killed it. I don't know what this movie would be without Michael playing the voice. So thank you, Michael. I love you so much. You did such a good job as the voice of our killer, and we can't wait to have you back for the sequel too. And then I actually switched the part to my friend Brendan, who was staying with me, and something came up with him so he could no longer play the part. So I was super desperate at this point, and I had contacted Jack Stannis, who had actually auditioned to be in the movie prior and didn't get a part. He lives out in New York, so it was a little bit challenging to try to write for his schedule, but it just so happened that I got in touch with him a few days before we were supposed to film, and he was able to work it out and get from Long Island to New Hampshire and come film a part in our movie. And Jack has his own series of Scream fan films on the internet called Slash that he's pretty well known for too, so it was kind of neat that we got to combine forces, even if it was just for a teeny tiny little scene, and have a little bit of a crossover between Stab and Slash. So thank you, Jack, and Zach, who came with Jack. Wow, that was hard to say, but thank you both so much for coming and being part of the movie. You really, really helped out. One of the biggest challenges in the movie was the fact that I was doing everything by myself because Rachel wasn't able to be involved. So playing the killer became very tricky. I prefer to play the killer usually because I've been stunt trained, so it's easier for me to be in the costume and take a punch and fall down, or throw a fake punch, or fake stab someone without them actually getting injured. So I kind of had to entrust that to a couple of different people throughout the movie. So I always give the killers a chance to be in the costume just so they can know what it feels like, because they're the killer in the movie. They would have known what it felt like to wear that costume. And then we also get to see what that actor would move like as the killer. So Chris and I both played the killer. Chris played it in the scenes in the motel where he kills Nikki and he's stalking Mark's character Ryan. anything in the hotel except for one shot. There's one shot where the killer lifts up the hook where he's sitting on the bed that we forgot to film, so I had to go back, and Nikki actually filmed that scene, and I was the killer in the costume just lifting up the hook for a second. But everything else in the motel is Chris. Then I'm actually in the costume for a couple of scenes. I kill Adam's character, I kill Brendan's character, Derek, who actually, Brendan, huge thank you to Brendan Antel for everything that he did on this movie. He was in the ghost costume more than all of us combined. He was in it for a very, very long time. He did a lot of the scenes. He did the very opening scene. He did Ashley and Ethan's death scene. He did the part where Hannah has to get lifted out of the car. He body doubled me in the ending sequence so that I could do some more filming, but he would be in the costume standing in for me. He also killed off my character in the costume and did all the talking through the webcam to everyone in the hotel. That was Brendan in there too. And Brendan, like I said, was originally gonna also be one of the opening Seth characters, one of the three, but we ultimately switched him to a different part too, where he played a drug dealer who just gets killed off in the alley. But again, big thank you to Brendan Antel for playing the killer, and he also helped me film the ending sequence. So that was really, really cool because I was so heavily involved in that scene. Any time where I'm on camera in that sequence, Brendan is filming. So thank you, Brendan, so much. And then also in the costume, we had Zachary Wally, who came down with Jack Santa from Long Island. So he played the killer in the opening where Sherry and Jack's character get killed. That's all Zach through that whole scene. And then he makes a little cameo as a police officer the next day. He's running the crime scene tape across Sherry's body. So you only get to see him a couple of times without the mask, but thank you, Zach, so much for that and for helping out so much. You guys were all so gung-ho that were in that costume and that did that for me, and Zach and Jack coming out from New York last minute to save us. Thank you all so, 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 so much. So production on this movie was kind of wonky too and all over the place, and everything was scheduled out of sequence, so that was pretty challenging for some of the actors to try to know all their lines. And it was also set in a very short time frame. Basically, we had about a month and a half, but we could only film on weekends around everybody's schedule and what times that they were available. So instead of doing like on a real movie, you would shoot like 4 or 5 pages a day, sometimes even longer on 4 or 5 pages, 1 or 2 or 3 days, just to get everything perfect. And we definitely did not have the time to do that. So we were doing like 30 to 50 pages a day on some of the busier days where we'd start at like 7 in the morning and film till like 2 a.m. So they were really long, busy days, especially for me. A lot of the actors got to leave in between and take breaks and do different stuff, but just all day for me, just running straight through on my own, doing everything, which I'm used to having to do quite a bit of everything. But like I said, without Rachel there just to sit with the cast and run their lines with them, or to hold the camera so I can do something, or to go get me the random light that's missing, like all of that now fell onto me. So production was just absolutely insane. The very first thing that we did for the movie was a read-through with everyone, and this still featured a lot of the original people who played themselves, and I actually don't have any video footage of it, oddly enough. I didn't film this read-through, but like Rachel was still there playing the Piper character because Stephanie wasn't involved yet. Kia was still there playing Deirdre because Ashley wasn't involved yet. So it was kind of funny to see the read-through and then to start filming with different actors, but the read-through was so much fun and we had a great time. We did have a hiccup or 3. There was a little bit of drama based on the contracts because we've had so many actors who commit to our movie and then just quit and don't show up, and it screws so many people over. Like, people lose out on working and all the gas money that they spend to be here and tons of stuff like that. So we had this clause in the contract that made actors that quit responsible for the cost of that day of filming, and this became an issue for quite a few members of the cast, and they didn't want to sign their contracts, and so there was a lot of drama, and we all worked it out in the end that, you know what, you're all going to show up, you're our most committed actors, so we'll worry about contracts another time, sign the media releases and all that other kind of stuff, and fill out your health information form so we know what you're allergic to, and we will deal with whether or not you show up as we went. And it kind of sucked that we didn't get to have that clause in the contract, but luckily it worked out, and everybody that was the final version of the cast showed up. So then the very first part of the movie that we filmed is actually the very opening scene, and I love the opening scene so much. It is on my list of like 3 or 4 scenes from the movie that I would like to reshoot, just because I feel like the lighting could be better and the angles of the camera could be better, and there's some shadows in there that I wish we couldn't see and stuff like that, and we had really bad audio. There's quite a few issues with audio in this movie because of background noise. We filmed in the middle of fall, so it started off really warm and then it got really cold. So we had ACs on a lot in the beginning and then heat on in the end, and then outside noises and traffic. Oh my goodness, there are so many traffic noises, which some of them you can still hear in the scenes too. So, but we started out in Concord doing the opening scene with Hannah and Ariana, and Hannah was playing her mother's character, Meredith, and Ariana was playing the younger version of the Claire character. And Brendan, of course, was in the costume as the killer, and Mark comes in as his character, Ryan Kincaid. And that was a really quick, easy shoot for the most part. There are a few little bloopers here and there, but we had a really good time. And the opening, actually, the very first shot of the movie was coincidental. Brendan had noticed as he was packing up some of the equipment from the movie, because he also became my helper on set in addition to everything else he was doing. I got a lot of use out of Brendan. He walked outside to bring out some equipment and noticed the lightning. So we kind of rushed back out there and filmed it and got that really sick opening shot with the lightning behind Hannah's house, and that was just really, really cool. So the next scene that we filmed was actually part of the Zoom call or the e-meet scene. We were going out to Dover, New Hampshire, which is about an hour away from me, to film with Ethan and Ashley because they were going to do their death scenes at night. And then we just scheduled in some more stuff during the day where they could do a few other things to knock them out and get them off the schedule. So the Zoom calls were a really, really interesting experience because everybody filmed their parts separately. I would sit there and read them the lines, or if the other actor just happened to be there, they would throw in some of their lines too. The timing, it had to be one take all the way through because we were going to see their cameras the whole time. So it was really, really challenging. So Ashley and Ethan had it pretty easy because they basically just had me and the opposite one reading their lines to them. And then as it went on and we had to film more characters, like Adam filmed his after that, I still just read the lines and prayed that it would work because I remembered how the actors delivered their lines and some of the timing of it. But it was at a completely different location, and again, he didn't have anyone around him either. Then I filmed my part of it, and then Nikki filmed hers last. So I don't know who had it the easiest and who had it the hardest, because Nikki at the end then had to have a playback of what was already edited together of everybody else talking, and she had allotted amounts of times for her to say her line, and then it would cut to the next person. So she had to squeeze them right in between every time someone was talking. So the Zoom call was crazy to film, and I think it was actually filmed over 4 different days. That was one of the most spread out scenes just because everybody was separate and we had to wait for their specific locations, like Nikki being in the hotel. So then we filmed Ashley and Ethan's death scenes, and that was really fun. It got bloody and we had a good time. Ethan did some cool stunts and got flipped over the car. Brendan really surprised me in the costume this night too, and he had some really cool movements for the killers, and he got to play with like kind of sneaking around and being a little creepier. And of course we did that tribute scene to Scream where he's dangling the car keys through the car window and then he disappears and the doors unlock and stuff. So I always like to do a little bit of tribute to Scream somewhere, wherever I can, and it was fun to kind of put a boy in Sydney's shoes and have him being the one in the car that can't find his keys. And then him calling Siri. I've never seen that done anywhere before in a horror movie, so I just thought that was so funny that he's like, hey Siri, you know, to try to save his life, because what else was he gonna do at that point? I'm like looking at my phone off to the side to make sure I didn't activate my Siri. So then the rest of the production schedule is kind of jumbled to me because everything got put together so quickly. Like I know we did I believe it was the second opening scene that came next with Jack and Sherry's character, and that filmed all night just for one night. We got it all done because Jack and Zach had to travel out from Long Island, so we filmed all the Sherry stuff first, and then when Jack and Zach got here, we filmed all the Jack stuff and kind of added him in. And there were a couple mistakes during that. We did a couple shots with him and Sherry where you could see him through the glass and Sherry on the other side, but he wasn't covered in any of his blood yet because we hadn't filmed his scene yet, so it didn't make sense to cut to it later. So we ended up having to refilm a couple of things quickly at the end to make that kind of work, but Sherry was already gone, so there's never really a shot where you see them together. I do think some people will think that the way some of the bodies disappear is weird, but that is what I wrote in the script. I wanted the deaths to kind of seem mysterious at first, so Sherry's body just kind of disappears off the counter, and so does all the blood. These are very efficient killers. Like, you can tell someone's been murdered there, but there's not a whole lot of evidence left behind, and that was for the killers to kind of taunt Ryan because he hasn't been able to catch him in 10 years. So the next day after that was one of the insane days that we started super, super early. I think it was an 8 a.m. call time or something like that. And everybody had to travel from so far to be here. So many people come up from Massachusetts. Mark and Chris and Stephanie and Ethan, everybody drives like well over an hour to be here that was in this movie. So the next day we started with the outdoor crime scene, and Zach's playing a cop, and we meet Mark's character and Chris's character for the first time, and then Stephanie's character for the first time. So that we kind of filmed in sequence, and that was one of those days that we had tons of issues with audio because we were outside and we were near really busy roads, so there was a lot of traffic. Some of that scene got redubbed at the beginning with Mark and Chris. All their lines had to be dubbed over because the audio was just that bad. And if I had a chance, we would have dubbed all the lines between Mark and Stephanie too. It just didn't work out because we didn't have time to do it. So there's still some shitty audio in that scene, and I totally apologize for that. And Stephanie is always a hoot to work with, but she really got thrown in last minute into this movie, so she didn't have a lot of time to learn her lines, and it was definitely a struggle for her. That day was a struggle in the beginning. There was a few lines that she just couldn't get, but everybody struggled with their lines on this movie. And that's part of our contract, is know your lines when you show up, you know? It just makes production so much easier. But I write a lot of dialogue, so the actors have to put up with memorizing paragraphs of what they have to say to each other. So Hannah, our lead girl, struggled tremendously too, and every scene she's in a different emotion in a different place, and she has so many lines, so I know it was hard for her. It was even hard for me at the end, and I wrote it, like doing the end scene, because there's just so much dialogue, because you kind of want to explain everything. You can't always show everything to tell the story. I try to as much as I can, but I end up relying on dialogue quite a bit. So thank you to all the actors for the wordy dialogue. I appreciate it. But there were a couple of scenes that got cut because either the dialogue was too wordy and the actors couldn't get it, or it was literally just too wordy and it became boring. So, but any of the scenes that got cut got posted separately from the movie so that you could see what we cut out. And I think if you watch them, you can tell why those parts got cut out. So after we filmed the outside scene, Mark's character comes in and gets stabbed, and that was Zach in the costume again. And then Chris's character comes in and they leave. And then we moved on to filming what was actually the very end sequence of the movie, which also got cut, where Ashley's character makes Hannah pancakes and brings them to her in bed. And I just didn't like the ending once it was done. The girls did a great job in the scene, but the scene felt kind of too short, like they were just kind of over it all of a sudden, and then the phone ringing, they just ignore it, and I don't know, it didn't work for me as the ending, so I decided to end it after the finale's ending. So you never really know what happens, and I think the idea of mystery is a little bit cooler that way. Whether or not Hannah's character did survive and what else happened after is kind of up to the audience until we make a sequel. So I thought it was a much better ending than what we had filmed. Mark and Chris had the most limited schedules out of anybody, so all of their scenes really were slammed back to back. So as that day continued, we went and filmed their two scenes that take place in the kitchen of their character's house, and then their scenes involving Stephanie, which is actually all in one house. Stephanie's house and Mark and Chris's house in the movie are actually one house, and we just used different areas of it and different exteriors to make them look like different houses. But it was all at my cousin's house, and that was really a fun day of filming too. Everyone was a little more prepared that day, so it was really fun. We did still have some kerfluffles with lines and stuff like that, but this is all after we had already filmed this huge opening sequence outside and then the end sequence, and now we're spending the day and the evening filming the rest of this stuff too. So that was a very, very challenging weekend of filming. And then the sequences after that were kind of all over the place and sporadic, aside from the motel filming. The motel filming was another one that was just 2 days back to back, and it was riddled with mistakes and behind the scenes drama that didn't involve any of the actors. Like, we had originally booked a different motel that looked more like the Bates Motel, and it was really creepy, and we were excited to use it. It was much more run down and ghetto, like the script refers to it being. So it was really sad that we didn't get to use it, but the owners of it were just awful. Like, we couldn't work with them at all, and they weren't going to allow all the cast in the rooms, and everyone had to show IDs, and it was just this long, nutty thing. So we gave up, and we actually ended up filming at a Super 8, and the Super 8 is usually pretty ghetto, but they had redecorated, so we ended up with this beautiful room. The only thing weird about it was it didn't have a closet, so we all kind of had to store our stuff in the shower to keep it out of the shot. It was really, really odd. And then we also couldn't get the room number that we wanted, 237, which is an homage to The Shining. Same with the name of the hotel, the Overlook Motel, the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Room 237 was where all the bad stuff happened. We stuck with it in the script, but we never could show the actual door number because we were actually on the 3rd floor, and I think we were in room like 318 or something like that. So it's supposed to be room 237 the whole time, but if you look at all the other doors, we're clearly on the 3rd floor with a whole bunch of other whatever numbers, 316, 320. But like I said, that filming was just another non-stop weekend from morning till night. We had to bust out every single scene that Nikki had as Cordelia. So we started with scenes involving other people, like her scene with Hannah's arrival and their wake up, and they had a couple of days that the scenes took place over at the hotel. So they were really filmed out of order. Anything that was filmed during the day was kind of spread out over the 2 days, and then the night scenes were like jammed together to make sure that we got those done, still out of sequence, especially the big party scene with everyone, which was also super fun to film. But it is really challenging to have that many actors in a room, and we couldn't have the AC on, so it was really, really hot. And then if people drop a line, everybody laughs. So filming just takes longer and longer and longer and longer as people mess up and get more tired and can't remember stuff. Hannah's actually wearing the wrong outfit. This is how tired she was at this point. Her character ends up being in the same outfit for a couple of days because for the party scene, she was supposed to change, and there was some miscommunication. Neither one of us noticed that she was in her outfit for the finale that she wears for the whole next day of the movie. So she ends up wearing that outfit, but she actually changes into PJs. If you notice in the scene where she's sleeping, when Mark checks on her, you can see her just for a brief second, and she's in a different outfit because she changed into PJs. So now it looks like her character wore this outfit, tossed it aside, put on PJs, went to bed, woke up, and put on the same exact outfit again. I mean, it happens in real life. It could happen. She's stressed out. We had a really, really good time at the hotel. Mess ups aside and the length of filming aside, it was such a great time. And like I said, the cast really bonded and they were so genuine and awesome with each other. And they really were there to have fun and be supportive of each other. When someone did drop a line, everyone tried to help. There were a few times that everyone tried to help a little too hard. But again, it was only because they cared and they really wanted this to be the best that it could be. So thank you all for that weekend of filming. And Nikki freaking killed it. I'm always amazed with Nikki, and I think she's such a great actress. And this part, like I said, was written for her, so she kind of was able to fall right into it. But it was just great to see her come alive again because we haven't filmed in so long. And next to Rachel, she's our longest running Stab Girl. She's been in more movies and short films than everybody else. So I love, love, love working with Nikki. And Nikki is actually pregnant. So we had to be very careful while filming. If you notice during her death scene, she just kind of gets hooked in the same spot over and over and over again because we didn't want to hit the tiny baby growing inside of her. But she's a trooper, and she was another one too that didn't really have a lot of time to learn her lines because if you don't know, in real life she has 2 other kids already and she's super busy. So she is just such a pro though, and she walked in and knew what she had to do and got right to business, and it felt like old times again. So that was really nice. And she's actually really close with Hannah, the lead girl in real life as well, which is how Hannah got involved with us in the short film True Love. That's where you may recognize Hannah from, but that was because Nikki included her. So it was really kind of fun to have their dynamic back on camera and have them playing best friends too. And then to have Adam step in as Hannah's gay best friend was just super fun because in real life, Hannah loves the gays, y'all. Hannah loves her a gay man. So her and Adam instantly clicked, and she already had the relationship with Nikki, so that was really fun to see and to give her character some lighter moments. And then the rest of the hotel was just nuts to film because there was so much to film. That attack scene and then Mark's chase scene in the hall. And there were so many scenes that filmed in the hallway that were supposed to be outside of what was a 1-story motel, but now they took place in this hallway because we didn't really want to be outside of a Super 8 too frequently. So it was a challenge, I won't lie, but it was one of those things that we just adapted to and then ran with it. So then we also had a full weekend just devoted to filming the ending of the movie. That was one of the only really big sequences that got kind of spread out over time so that we would have a little bit longer to shoot stuff. So it was 2 nights of filming for the end sequence. And the first night we filmed all the way up until Mark and Chris's character die. Like I said, they live really far away, so we try to squeeze their production in as much as we can. So we started as soon as the sun went down and filmed into the wee hours of the night to make sure we got all the shots we needed up until them dying. And then the next night, they didn't have to be there. Based on their availability, they couldn't. So we spread out the second night of shooting to start with like mine and Hannah's fight sequence, and then it goes all the way through Ashley and Stephanie coming in and all the way to the end of the movie. So those were actually shot over 2 nights, so that was really, really cool. And that was a scene again too where Brendan, he's actually in the costume, like he comes up the stairs in the costume dressed as the killer. These stairs, in fact, right behind me. That's Brendan coming up and standing there and kind of nodding his head to deliver a few of my lines. And then once I take off the mask, it's me. Like we changed a little bit. I was in the costume once or twice for it just to try to get some angles. And then Brendan filmed so much of that scene. And he had never filmed anything before, so I was able to give him some really good instruction. And he came up with some really beautiful shots too. I was really impressed. He really had a good eye through the camera. And that whole sequence was just nuts to film. We had so much fun doing it. The end is always kind of the most fun scene to film because it's always over the top and dramatic. Yes, a little wordy, But there's big fights, there's screaming, there's everybody dies or everybody doesn't, you know what I mean? You've seen the movie, I'm not spoiling anything for you. But that is always so much fun to film, so I think we all had a really good time over those 2 nights. Yes, we struggled with lines still, but we still had a great time, and getting to do the action is always fun, and I think it was actually funny to pit my character against Hannah's character, because we're probably the 2 skinniest people in the movie, so it's kind of like watching a chick fight go down at the end of the movie. Like, it may be a little unbelievable that I'm one of the killers because I'm so scrawny, but Hannah was so scrawny too, so honestly in real life I'm not sure who would win in a fight. We gave each other a run for our money in that. The end scene also involves some really nice moments. Mark added in kind of his own lines in an apology to his brother's character before he gets shot in the head by his brother. And Chris was always fun to work with. Things got awkward. Chris agreed originally, before the script was even done, he knew that him and I were going to have to kiss at the end of the movie. And we agreed to just one take of it, and it wouldn't be anything. We wouldn't rehearse. There would be, we would just go for the stage kiss and move on. And we even decided that I would go up and he would go down, and I was to the left and he was to the right, who the top, who the bottom was. We kind of figured that all out ahead of time just to make it easy for one take. But we had to do a couple of takes, because we couldn't even connect with each other's faces without laughing, because it was just such a goofy moment, because he's very straight in real life and I'm very not, so it was probably more fun for me than him, but I think I enjoyed watching how stressed out he was the most out of all of it. But Chris really deserves a special thank you for that, because I have struggled with so many actors that are straight men that refuse to play gay, and my view on that is, you're an actor, play the role you're given. Whether he's gay or straight or a tranny, play the part. You're an actor. Why anyone in this day and age would have an issue with playing a gay guy, I don't know. And Chris was so awesome and gung-ho about it that I can never thank him enough. And seriously, Chris, thank you so much for everything that you brought to this movie and how willing you were to go there to make everything come out awesome. So after the end scene was done filming, we had a few more scenes left to film that actually went really quickly. We had the scenes at Adam's apartment to film with Hannah and Adam, and his kitty got a nice little cameo. And like I said, Rachel came to help out that weekend. That was a whole just one day of filming by itself, the stuff at Adam's house. Nothing else was involved that day. And then there was a scene in Livingston Park between Ethan and Ashley that we filmed, and we actually had to film it twice. And we filmed it about a month apart too, so it's actually kind of funny the way that it worked out. The lighting wasn't right the first time, and the sound wasn't right, and there were millions of people around us, so we had to do reshoots, and we accidentally missed some of Ethan's lines because we were rushing, so we didn't have a shot of him delivering some of his lines, which was silly once I edited it together. So the way the scene ended up working out is that the very first half of it is from the reshoot, and the second half is almost all from the original shoot, which, like I said, was about a month apart. The second day was freezing, the first day was hot. So Ethan actually has his sleeves down for the reshoot stuff, but then they're rolled up in the other scenes. And then the very last thing that we actually filmed was the movie within the movie, Agent of Death 3, and it's just a little sequence from it. And I wanted to work in some of the donated masks that we received, and that I thought was the best way to do it, was in a scene. So all the villains in that scene are wearing the Stab version of the MTV Scream mask and the Goblin mask that Burke Bench Designs created for us, and they came out really, really cool. And the Agent of Death scene was really fun to film because, like I said, it was the last thing we filmed, and it was so different from everything else we filmed. And Ethan finally got to play his character Jack Craven, which, yes, is a tribute to Wes Craven and the Jack Ryan movies, if you want to know where that name came from. But I think it was a lot of fun for all of us, and I got to have my cousin involved again, who I would love to have in a bigger part sometime. I just never cast him right away as something else, except for Mud in Theta. That was written for him. But this time I was like, hey, I need an actor. He only has one line. Come do this part for me. And it came out awesome. They did such a great job. So the killer's motives in the movie were actually based on something that happened to a couple of us from the cast in real life. It was based on my experience when I was writing it. But then as I kind of told the cast about it, that I had an ex that died from a heroin overdose, some of them had the same thing that had happened to them, or they had lost friends or family members or, you know, loved ones to the opioid crisis. So that was something that I really felt the need to address, and something that really affected my life heavily during our little pause between making movies. And that's one of the main reasons I wasn't making movies, was because I was so upset over this loss. So to me, that was a really big part of the movie, and that's why Derek the drug dealer gets killed, and his filming was just a completely side thing, was a separate night from everything else, and it was an important addition to the script to show kind of early on what the killer's motive really was, to rid the world of the drug dealers and the drugs. So it also launches the debate of who was really the bad guy and who was really the good guy. If you notice in the end scene of the movie, there's two lights on us. There's a red light and a blue light, and that was kind of supposed to represent the good and the evil in everybody. So it's frequently down the center of our faces to show that everybody has a good side and an evil side, and it's the choices you make that make you a good or an evil person. And there was this long debate over whether or not a lead girl could actually be the bad guy. And I'm not sure that anybody else caught it. I know some of the actors did. Ashley Swank came in during the filming of the end scene, and she came in and she goes, you know what? I think the character of Claire actually deserves to die. Like, Jackson is right, you know? Like, she is responsible for the death of his loved one, you know? Like, she had it coming. And I kind of wanted the whole audience to feel that way once you find out the killer's motives. Like, is the killer a good guy? He's killing off people that were selling drugs and killing innocent people. So he's not really killing innocent, he's killing killers. Kind of like a Dexter. And I'm not sure everyone will fully grasp that, you know, because there's so much just watching it as a Scream movie. But it really is a big statement at the end. And there really is good and evil in all of us. And what we decide to do with it is ultimately our own demise. So take that as you will. And I kind of want to know in the comments what you guys think. Who do you think the bad guy was in the movie? Was it the killer or was it Claire? Overall, filming the Stab reboot was so exciting, and we finally got to finish a movie. That felt better than anything, I think. But it was just such a great experience with such an amazing cast and such fun locations, and everyone was so committed and gung-ho to get covered in blood, and the fans were so excited. It was really great to have that feeling back. And I don't know if I'd still rate it as my favorite Stab movie yet, because it's definitely a reboot, you know? It's a kind of a reinvention. And Stab 6 has notably always been my favorite of our Stab movies, minus the terrible audio. But this new Stab reboot really has something special to it. And the music composed by our amazing composer, Joe Walker, is just phenomenal. And it gives it this new kind of more modern horror feel to it too. And the idea of the killers pretending to be ghosts gave it that supernatural element that some people like or don't like. You know, so there's so many levels of this movie that were so exciting to work on. It really was an exciting script to write. And hopefully we'll be doing a sequel. And I'm not sure what the sequel is going to entail yet, but a lot of the cast is interested in coming back, and we have auditions posted already, so any of you can audition to be in it as well. But I'm kind of excited to continue and hope that we don't run into any more issues like the last string of movies. Like, maybe we'll actually make it through a full Stab 7 this time. Stab 1 through 7? Can we do it? Nobody knows. But thank you all for your support and for watching this documentary. I really hope you enjoyed this extra special behind-the-scenes look at how we made Stab. And stay tuned for more. I love you all, Stabbers.